Hi class, this week we were asked to read a couple different versions of Cinderella and give a short summary of those and also talk about the similarities and differences in those. And I just want to apologize in advance. I have two little ones that might be coming in and out of my video. I'm sorry about that. But let's get ahead and get started. The first version I read. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the fundamentals of a Cinderella story. Basically, every Cinderella story that I've read has some sort of rags to riches tale. There's usually some antagonist, an evil sibling or step sibling, two or more, that are going against the Cinderella character and making life miserable for them. There's usually some kind of fairy that comes along and helps them along to move towards that happily ever after. The fairy usually does have rules though, and the most common one is to be home at midnight because then everything changes back to normal. There's always a person to marry to make life happy ever after. The first story that I'm going to talk about is The Rough-Faced Girl. It takes place in a Native American village. The girl is mistreated by her two older sisters. She also lives with her dad, but I think he just doesn't really take an active role in anything. He just lets the two older sisters do what they want. And so there's this invisible being in the village that all the girls want to marry. They hear that he's very handsome, even though no one can really see him. To marry him, they have to go to where he lives and talk to the sister and answer some questions. So her older sisters, who are very mean, go all dressed to the nines, as beautiful as they can look, and get there. And then they lie, basically saying that they've seen him, but are unable to answer any of the sisters' questions. So she knows that they're not telling the truth. So she sends them home. Next, the rough-faced girl decides she wants to go because she has seen him. And so she decides to go even though she doesn't have anything nice to wear. Her dad doesn't have any money or anything to give her. So she goes as she is. And she's burned by the fire. She has scars. And the whole village just basically mocks her and laughs at her, saying it's not going to happen for her. She gets there and the sister sees right away that she has a good heart. And then she answers the questions correctly, that the bow is made of rainbows, that his runner of his sled is made from stars in the Milky Way, and then in walks the invisible being, and he sees her and knows she's beautiful and says so. And so she goes into the lake and washes off all her scars, and she just looks gorgeous. And they end up getting married. So the main point of that story was that beauty lies underneath, that they can see through the outside to see what's beautiful on the inside. The next book I read was Ella Enchanted, which I found to be different than the actual movie that I watched a couple times. I believe it's Anne Hathaway that stars in that one. Ella is born, and Lucinda, one of the fairies, bestows the gift of obedience upon her so that she stops crying. Well, this gift actually is kind of a hindrance and causes her to lose a lot of relationships and causes her trouble in her life. Like when she's young and she's having a birthday, her mom her cook gives her the cake and says to eat, and she just eats and eats and eats, even when she's full and can't stop. So she's eating this cake and she's not feeling well and she can't stop, and they're figuring out that whatever she's commanded to do, she has to do, whether it's good or bad, she has to do it. So years later, her mom dies, unfortunately, and so she goes to the funeral and she meets this amazing prince, and they hit it off. But then she has to go away to boarding school. Her father's going to send her away. And so she corresponds with this prince while she's there. And there's these two mean girls that are just awful to her. And they end up being her stepsisters. The father marries their mother. So they find out her secret and kind of misuse it there too. So she runs away on some adventures. She meets ogres. She does some things. She tells the prince that she can't marry him because she's afraid that if someone commands her to do something awful to him, that she will. And she wants him to be safe because she loves him. So ultimately, she ends the curse because she refuses to marry him, even though she wants to or is told to. And so luckily, they are able to marry eventually, and they live happily ever after. Then the third story that I read was just a silly off-syllabus option that I've read to my class before. It's a male version of Cinderella. It's Prince Cinders, and it's a cute little story of this little prince who's scrawny, and he's got 3 older brothers who are big and hairy, and he wishes he was like them so that he didn't get pushed around all the time. They go to the discos with their princess girlfriends and just do whatever they want. So he's cleaning, and one day this little fairy drops down, and she's not a very good fairy. She does quite a few mistakes as she's getting him ready. Like, she asks for a suit, and he ends up in a bathing suit, and then he ends up as a hairy monkey. So he goes to the disco and doesn't really have any fun, is going to the bus because he wants to get home. Right at midnight, he switches back into Prince. Well, little did he know there was a princess standing at the bus stop who thought that he had saved her from the big hairy monkey, Princess Lovelypenny. He was shy, so he ran away and he lost his pants, so she decided to use his pants to find her prince. And she went around looking for her prince. Nobody could fit in the scrawny little pants. The mean stepbrothers or brothers even tried, and they couldn't get him on. And then she saw him, so she told him to try them, and he did, and he was able to fit them. So then she proposed right away, and they lived happily ever after. So similarities between these stories, they all were rags to riches, basically. They fit that profile. They started really with nothing. They were mistreated by those around them and not really given a chance at a better life. And then they took it upon themselves to get better and to live happily ever after. There were quite a few differences as well. Prince Cinders, of course, was a male version, so his roles were reversed. And in Ella Enchanted, hers was more about finding herself than it was finding her true love, and she did. And then Rough Face Girl, it was more about beauty is on the inside than it was about her marrying her Prince Charming. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I enjoyed reading all the Cinderella stories this week, and I look forward to your presentation. Thank you.